Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Star Wars Rogue One non-spoilery review. Make sure you go see the movie. It ended up being so much better than I expected it to be. There is a Star Wars giveaway happening right now. It's basically for 2 IMAX gift certificates. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. Be sure to click that bell to enable alerts so that you don't miss out on anything. So right off the bat, Mads Mikkelsen is just so amazing in this movie. Felicity Jones did a great job, but I feel like Mads Mikkelsen, no matter what his role is, he's always going to do something interesting, regardless of how he's written. But Donnie Yen, what a badass. I was so happy when I heard he was going to be in this movie. You always get hyped when you know Donnie Yen's in a movie and you know he gets to fight a ton of people. And then Ben Mendelsohn, just what an amazing antagonist. The way they play with the John Williams music, the way they open the film to differentiate it from other Star Wars films. There's so many things that are similar, but yet very different about this that made it so much better than I ever thought it could be. There's so many things that we can say about this film. I'll tell you, total success off the bat. Doing a film that does not rely on the Skywalkers, at least in a major way, or on the idea of Jedi with lightsabers. It does this amazing job of broadening the mythology of the Force in a really interesting way and just proves that you can tell a really interesting story from start to finish with a single film. You don't need an entire trilogy to tell an amazing story. So if this proves anything, it's that they can totally do just one-off films in different corners of the Star Wars galaxy. They effectively visited more different new planets that we'd never seen before in like the first 20 to 30 minutes of the movie than we saw in the entirety of Star Wars Episode 7. So the other big achievement is that it also enriches the other movies even though it exists by itself with a different group of characters. It's just like the kernel of a story that we had before. We knew the rebels had stolen the Death Star plans, so they took that and turned it into a movie, and it totally worked. And now when you go see A New Hope, Episode 4, after you see this movie, you'll have so much more context. The moments like Darth Vader at the beginning of Episode 4, where he's talking to the Imperial Council about the new Death Star being completed, will mean so much more, and that's even just like a little part of it. We don't even need a sequel to this movie, and I think that's kind of the idea, is that, they'll take like little pieces of stories from the previous Star Wars films and then turn that into something like Rogue One, only just in a vastly different part of the galaxy, during a different time period, in a different context, that will enrich the other saga films without necessarily being beholden to the Skywalker family. The other amazing thing about this is that it also broadens the Empire and the Rebellion as characters themselves. Like, you have the characters that you follow around in the film, but then you have the idea of the Empire itself as this living organism with just a lot of people working for it. Just because it's evil doesn't mean that everybody that works for the Empire, all the officers, agree with each other. There's this big group of diverse people, and what's the big thing that we knew about the Empire in the previous films? They're bad, the rebels are good. But this film puts the war back in Star Wars. It does a really good job of being sort of like a war documentary mixed with this real down and dirty heist movie. So the rebels, even though we know they're on the right side of this, have to do really bad things to accomplish their goals. So it's much grayer. It's not just like really good guys against really bad guys. Their Orso Krennic character is arguably like the big antagonist of the film, but in no way does he feel like an Emperor or a Darth Vader type character, somebody who is doing really evil things. Like, it took a long time to figure out that Darth Vader had something underneath that mask that wasn't just this terrible, really raspy breathing person that crushed everyone's throats when they displeased him. So you get a much more well-rounded character, and in developing the Orso Krennic character, you learn a lot about the power structure of the Empire. Not everybody loves everybody else inside the Empire, especially just if they're making giant super weapons. So it's really funny how they mythologize the Death Star in this too, because it's kind of like this white elephant pie in the sky project that these weirdos are working on, and the rest of the Empire just completely does not care about it until it's finished and we get to Episode 4 with this council scene with like the other Imperial Council members and the generals just really excited about it. Not everybody in the Empire up at the top shared those feelings when they first got started. So reshoots, I know a lot of you were asking about the reshoots, like what did they change about the film? They did a whole bunch of stuff to change just big portions. So if you look at the trailers, most of these scenes, did not make it into the final version of the film, which is kind of weird, but a lot of times that happens. Like, they'll market a film really early on, but then later they'll find better ideas. They'll make subtle changes in scenes that completely change the context, so they just have to cut out like whole big swaths of the film. But as weird as it sounds, the film is great, so all the stuff that they changed was for the better. What happened is they said they initially shot most of the film in a really handheld documentary war film type way. So when they got to the edit, they realized that there was just like a little connective tissue missing between scenes, and they turned it into more of what you would think of as a traditional Star Wars film. So that being said, if you've been asking for a more mature Star Wars film, like a Star Wars film that's made not so much for like really little kids, but for adults, Rogue One is it, just in the way it treats some of the themes of war in the galaxy in the stuff that it's dealing with. So even though all the characters are really funny, the comedy is great, it's actually a pretty serious Star Wars film. So you have all these rebels that are coming together all over the galaxy, like this is still towards the beginning of the rebellion. It's between episode 3 and episode 4 in the timeline. But you have this empire that's trying to steal all the resources from all these different planets. The people that live there are saying, this is bullcrap, we're going to come together and stop you from doing this. And that's where you get to the rebellion. So the film does a really good job of showing you that process, like how they come to that conclusion and what it is that makes the Empire so terrible, even though not everybody that works for the Empire are terrible people. So what's the other really big thing about Star Wars films? All the creatures, all the costumes. They had some of the most diverse group of aliens in the film that you've ever seen in Star Wars. Now, like George Lucas always made a really big deal about trying to make the newer films, like the prequels, even the Clone Wars, look as different as possible from previous Star Wars films. But like I said, the first 20 to 30 minutes of the film, you visit so many different planets, and as you go to all those different places, everywhere looks very different in terms of the people, the aliens, the creatures. The sheer quantity of creature work in this film is just amazing. And the cosplay is going to be on fire next year at Comic-Con. Like the Shore Troopers look amazing, the Death Troopers, even from the Empire standpoint. Now just forget about the Rebels for a second, but all the new Empire stuff they show off. So the design language flows a lot from Episode 4 because this is kind of a prequel to Episode 4. So like all the Star Destroyers, the Death Star itself looks familiar, but they found little ways to just include a bunch of new things within that design scheme. So like the Shore Troopers are new, the Death Troopers are new. But the interesting thing is they said they also changed Darth Vader's costume. So like even minor details like that, or even when they were on the sets filming the scenes, like in the backgrounds, they have a lot of playback on the screens. Like when you're on a Star Destroyer, Ben Mendelsohn, the actor, said that it totally took him back to his childhood just because he was standing in front of all these screens, doing his lines, and they were on this playback loop. And just looking at them, they looked like they were straight out of 1977. They were so perfect. They did such a good job earlier this year marketing the film, showing off behind the scenes stuff. Like if you're a big geek for the way they make Star Wars films, then you will go crazy when you see Rogue One. So the film does a really good job of like being in this very Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6 universe just because of the design language and the time period that it falls in, without being completely beholden to all the Skywalker stuff and just slavishly setting up other movies like Episode 7 does. Not that I think that Star Wars Episode 7 was a bad movie, I just feel like Rogue One does a much better job of what it set out to do, tell like a really small self-contained story about a really big event in the history of the galaxy, while at the same time enriching the other films. Star Wars Episode 7 had like the Herculean task of being the first Star Wars movie in such a long time. There was no way that it was going to live up to everyone's expectations. So with that in mind, here's my new ranking of all the Star Wars movies from favorite to slightly less favorite. There are no Star Wars films that I actively hate, even the prequels. I don't hate the prequels. Some of them I just don't like as much as the others. So favorite film, Empire, then A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, then Rogue One, which I like a little bit better than Episode 7, and then Attack of the Clones. So let me know, what are your favorite Star Wars films from most favorite to least favorite? Just rank them all in the comments. Just just because I feel like Rogue One is good enough that a lot of people will feel like it's even better than Star Wars Episode 7. That's the real surprise of the year. I'm so blown away that they were able to do that. Now, it might not make quite as much money as Episode 7 because you have like a lot of people that normally wouldn't go see a Star Wars film that were so excited at the idea of a new Star Wars film that last year they just got up off their asses and went to the movie theater, whereas like this year they're like, oh, okay, I saw Star Wars last year. I don't need to see it again. I'll wait for Episode 8 if I want to go back. So I still think it's going to make an ungodly sum of money, and it's going to show Lucasfilm that they can do small one-off films about other parts of the galaxy, other groups of characters that we haven't met before, as long as it enriches the other films. So next big elephant in the room, what does that say about the Obi-Wan Kenobi film that everyone's been clamoring for? That means they can still do stuff like that, but they shouldn't be afraid to try brand new things, which is really where we're headed after Episode 9, like the idea that we might not have films about the Skywalker saga anymore. They just move on to something else. So I will be doing a Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi video really soon, and I'll explain like what's going on with him in the Star Wars universe. They do have a plan for him. There's a reason why they haven't announced a Star Wars Obi-Wan film, because money is not a concern. They would make $1 billion on an Obi-Wan film. It's just that they have a very specific plan for that character within the scope of the new saga films. So rest assured, Star Wars Episode 8 and Episode 9 have a plan for the Obi-Wan character, and I'll explain part of what I think that is in my next Star Wars video. So what's going to happen is I'll do my spoilery Easter egg video later this weekend. I'll do the Obi-Wan video before that, but later tonight I have some new Spider-Man Homecoming that I'm going to post, and then I'm going to go see Rogue One again. So if you've already seen it once, try to go see it twice, because there are a lot of Easter eggs. Some of them are actually pretty easy to spot, and one of them is like a planet name. So I'll just say, there's a planet that is named that's an anagram for one of the biggest Star Wars characters of all time. So look out for that when you go see the movie. I am just so happy that this ended up being good. While you guys wait for that to post, you can click here to rewatch those Spider-Man Homecoming trailers, and you can click here to rewatch that Rogue One behind the scenes video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.